Good evening, Grinders. Welcome to the pre-lock show for Thursday Night Football. Carolina Panthers versus the Houston Texans. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka BlenderEd, Blender HD, if you want to follow me there on Twitter. Joined by SDL Cards, Justin Van Zuden for it's Thursday Night Football. So we have to expect that these games are not going to be the greatest. It looks like a 43 total. Carolina's favored by 8. Is this a game that, I mean, we saw the Texans the first week, they had some life, but that was with Tyrod Taylor. Do you think this is going to be something worth watching on Thursday night, or something that you're just glad you had built showdown lineups so you can make the game a little bit more interesting?
No, it's not going to be that interesting. Davis Mills sucks. So, I'm sorry to any Davis Mills fans that might be out there. I've ruined their night in the first minute of the show, but it's going to be tough for the Texans to score. I mean, you look at their skill players offensively, they've only got a team total of 17. And last week's game was entertaining. I mean, that was a fun one. Certainly more fun than I kind of anticipated going in there with Washington and the Giants. So, that was an entertaining Thursday night game. We had a really good one the first week of the season. I'd be really surprised if this one lives up to that same billing. I mean, we've had some good primetime games so far. The Baltimore game against Kansas City was great last Sunday night. But this one's got a long ways to go with Sam Darnold against Davis Mills. My hopes aren't high, but it's a standalone island football game, so we can't complain. It's good sports to bet on and play some DFS.
Right. And if you're going to bet on it, why not go to BetMGM, our sponsor here. You can use the bonus code GRINDERSBET, all one word, GRINDERSBET. And if you bet $10, you get $200 instantly if your team scores a touchdown. So go to BetMGM, use the promo code GRINDERSBET, all one word, to get that offer. So as usual, we start out these shows with looking at inactives. Is there anything that stands out that is unexpected that we didn't? We know that Amendola was going to be out. We know that what other Houston receiver was going to be out? The younger guy. I have no idea. I forgot his name. Who's not projected?
Oh shoot!
Nico Collins. Nico Collins was going to be inactive. From the looks of it, is there anything that?
Yeah,
there's anything that's outside of what was already projected.
Yeah, that's about it. Collins, he played 43 snaps the first week. Didn't really play last week, got injured. So you look at their snaps from last week, it was 56 for Cooks, 55 for Conley, 22 for Andre Roberts. So, those three guys will pick up the lion's share.
Right. And Anthony Miller's active. He was a healthy scratch the first 2 weeks. So really on the Texans side, it's like Brandon Cooks and a bunch of cheapos, right? The Texans typically run 2 wide receiver sets. And then they have a 4-headed backfield committee. And then the Carolina is much more condensed offense. Obviously, we have to start out with, the elephant in the room, the fantasy darling, Christian McCaffrey, 13,400 on DraftKings. We have him at, if you compare also with the captain ownership.
Yeah, 40% captain.
Right. 40% captain, 50% flex, which is over 90% total ownership. Do you see yourself building a lineup, no matter what field size, without him in at least the flex?
I think you can. We saw this the first week of the season with Lamar Jackson in the Monday night game. He was like 90% owned, and I don't believe he was on the winning lineup, despite the fact that, he had a couple touchdowns in the game. He did have some turnovers. And there's no doubt that in a game like this, there's not going to be a ton of offensive production, and McCaffrey is your safest bet to production. But in any NFL game, there's say a 5% chance there's something that somebody gets hurt, and he's going to be owned on 90% of rosters. And I'm not saying you're banking on a guy getting injured, but if something weird happens and he just doesn't have his best day, or they get most of their production through the air with their wide receivers. They got some talent at the wide receiver position. So, maybe it's just a week where McCaffrey doesn't do as much as, we're accustomed to. It's certainly not the most likely outcome, but there's so much potential there with his ownership likely exceeding 90%. I certainly don't think you have to play him in 100% of lineups just because of what we've seen in other games. That's not to say he doesn't project well. It's just a game theory thing. So, I'll still have him in a bunch of lineups, but he probably won't be in 90% of mine, maybe a little less than that.
Right. I built 15 lineups for today. I have him in 12 of 15. The thing about that example with Lamar Jackson is that works best on high scoring games.
Right.
Okay. So I'm not saying that this is not going to be a high scoring game or a low scoring game. The lower scoring this game is McCaffrey getting 22 points. He may still be the highest scoring player on the slate, and they may still need him in captain. Typically it's those slates where Chris McCaffrey scores 25, 27 points, but the game is 35, 28. And, Robbie Anderson has 120 and 2. And he's a better captain. And because of Christian McCaffrey's salary at 13.4, it's much better to have both quarterbacks and some of the cheaper wide receivers. That McCaffrey still has the 4th highest score, the 3rd highest score on the slate, but just doesn't fit into a 50K kind of build that way. That was the case with Lamar Jackson, where he's the 3rd highest score on the slate, yet still didn't appear in the GPP, large field GPP winning lineup. So take that into account. So if we think that way, that the only way that McCaffrey does not, that most likely, that probably there are other ways you get hurt, that he doesn't appear in the lineup at all. We're not just talking about captain, we're just talking about at all, is if it's a higher scoring game where you don't need his points. So to me, if you're not going to play McCaffrey in your lineup, I can't see a world where you don't play Darnold, Moore, Anderson, at least 2. Darnold and
at least 2 of them.
At least 2, if not more. You're playing for the case that McCaffrey has what he did in week 1, 80 yards in both directions and no touchdowns, right? 80 receiving, 80 rushing, no touchdowns. But the Carolina Panthers still score 4 or 5 touchdowns, and it's 2 through Moore, 1 through Anderson. Terrence Marshall has one where you don't necessarily need McCaffrey's points. Now, obviously, we're talking about this is a contrarian way to play. This is a large field way to play. But I think the simplest thing, if you're okay, I don't want to fade the best projected player on the slate by 8 points or in raw points in general. I think the simplest thing is what I did. So I played 12 of 15 lineups with McCaffrey, none of them in the captain. If you run McCaffrey in the captain at 13.4K, essentially, in order to get unique-ish and I'm using the word itch because I'm not even sure you could get that unique. You're essentially just rotating some of these really low, you have Alex Erickson or Chris Moore off the practice squad or Tommy Tremble, and you're just hoping. You're hoping that either that one of those guys gets a touchdown, gets a 6-7 points, and McCaffrey scores so much. He gets 42 points in the flex, where at 1.5x, he now has 63. Like, even then, I think that those lineups could easily be duplicated 20, 30, 40 times, even at that, even with the no-name type of guys. But if you're spending 50K using Christian McCaffrey and captain, and you have no player in your lineup that's a single digit owned, like, to me, for almost any field, even in a smaller field, I just throw those lineups out. I'm just like, this is going to be duplicated too much. So I think it's not a matter of whether or not Christian McCaffrey is a good play. Like Justin, when people listen to go, oh my God, they're saying not to play Christian McCaffrey. It's like, no, he is the best play. If you're making double ups, if you're playing 10 man, sure. Yeah. Don't even think about fading him, right? Just throw him in. You don't have to worry as much about being unique, but if you're going to be playing the large field GPP on DraftKings, you have to think of ways. If you play McCaffrey, how can I be different? And any way that you think you're going to be different, a lot of times is not even different enough. So thinking even more outside the box. So I have Christian McCaffrey lineups where he's in flex, but I'm still leaving 6,000 on the table. Like, I'm still leaving. I'm looking for the cheaper touchdowns, different captains in those lineups. And if Christian McCaffrey puts up 42 points and beats me, then so be it. So let the lineup that splits 734 ways win first place. Now, in the smaller field stuff, you don't necessarily have to go to that extent. But what is your thoughts, Justin, about, because McCaffrey is obviously the biggest pass catching running back in the league, playing Sam Darnold at captain and having Christian would you be more inclined to fade Christian McCaffrey in the flex in a Sam Darnold lineup, or more in a DJ Moore or Robbie Anderson captain lineup?
I think in the Moore Anderson captain lineup, because then you're banking on them getting more volume than what they normally would. So those would be the ones where I think maybe you let McCaffrey go. I think even in some Darnold captain lineups, you can play for McCaffrey getting a high volume of catches. But if you're captaining the wide receivers, I think those are the ones where you gain the most by potentially fading McCaffrey.
On the other side of the game, Brandon Cooks, it's basically Brandon Cooks with an absurd target share, because it's basically him and a bunch of no ones. We have to assume that the Texans are most likely going to be down, most likely have to pass the ball. Brandon Cooks in the captain seems like a fairly decent play. I mean, he's obviously very similarly priced to the Carolina receivers, but he's actually going to be lower owned in the captain. We have in the captain spot McCaffrey at 40, Darnold at 12, DJ Moore at 10, Robbie Anderson at 6, and then Cooks right underneath at 6. I don't think it's out of the question, because people don't think this way. People tend to think, average DFS players go, well, the captain is from the winning team. Well, who says it has to be from the winning team? Maybe the Panthers win, 21-14, right? Something like that. But the losing wide receiver has 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, there's no reason why you can't build lineups that have 4 Panthers in it, but your captain is Brandon Cooks. So I do have, I think, let's see, look here. I think I have two lineups that are like that, where Brandon Cooks is in the captain, Mills is in the flex, and then I play 4 Panthers. So I don't think that, especially with all these no names, if Cooks is going to get so much production, to me, if Cooks is in the captain, I don't want to have any of the running backs in there. You have to kind of play it for Cooks basically taking up 60+% of the offense, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that works better if the Texans are behind. They have to throw, and they ignore their stable of terrible running backs, and and they just decide to throw it. So I don't mind that, even in lineups where you think the Panthers might win the game.
How about the running backs on the Texans? I mean, do you think out of all the players that are going to get significant enough snaps, we're not talking about the bottom the Farrell Browns and the Andre Roberts and the Brandon Zylstras or anything. But we have the ownership. Let me sort by salary here. We have Ingram at 26, Lindsey at 14, David Johnson at 17. I mean, this Burkhead, he gets a couple of snaps, I guess. He's down there somewhere.
Yeah,
barely owned.
Last week, it was 26 for Johnson, 19 for Ingram, 14 for Lindsey, and 11 for Burkhead. That is what you call an absolute disaster of a mess. And I just, like, especially if they're playing from behind, Ingram is the one I have least interest in because he's going to be the highest owned. And what's he going to do in a game where they get behind? Like, none of these guys are particularly good. So give me the ones that are going to be a little less owned and are a little cheaper. And if you're playing from Houston being behind, like it was David Johnson that got the most snaps last week at 26. So I guess I like him the best. He's got 6 targets so far. It's just, it really is drawing straws with these guys. But particularly if you're playing on DK, like, David Johnson seems to be the guy that has the most secure snap count with some pass catching potential. Mark Ingram has 1 catch for a loss of 1 yard, and he's just not very good anymore. So David Johnson, I guess, is the one I'm most interested in, but this isn't a ringing endorsement by any means.
Right. I'm more interested in Ingram in lineups where you're playing where the Texans actually have a lead. So I do have like one Mark Ingram captain lineup with the Texans defense, and maybe the game goes the other direction. But I think in general, if you're going to play a lineup that has like Davis Mills in it and playing for a Texans pass attack, like I think, like Ingram is probably not the guy in that lineup, unless obviously the Texans, roll the Panthers, right? Where it's a 28-0 game.
That ain't happening.
Right. But that's unlikely to happen. But in general, because it is kind of a 4-headed backfield, the ownership in general on the backfield is going to be lower. The problem is just figuring out which of the guys. I think in general, I'd probably not play more than one in a lineup. Right? If you're gonna take a guess, is it gonna be one of those games? I mean, look, we saw the first week where every one of them where Ingram, Johnson, and Lindsey all get touchdowns. And that's the optimal lineup. Well, that's the optimal lineup. Good luck to you. I ain't playing 3 Texans running back
no,
in the same lineup.
Definitely not.
Okay. As always, we want to talk about the defenses and the kickers. When it comes to choosing defenses and kickers, a lot of times you have to just look at where they're priced and what players below them have a potential to outscore them, because kickers and defenses don't have the highest of ceilings. So with the Panthers defense being 6,200, the guys that are underneath are Lindsey, Johnson, Arnold, Zylstra, Marshall. Then we get the 2 kickers. Then we get Chuba Hubbard. And then we get the Texans defense. So do you think at 6,200, although, 17% owned is not as high as for a defense in this type of game? A lot of times we would see defenses be 30%, 40% owned in these types of spots. Do you think that 6,200, do you think there's just too many people below them that could, score double-digit points that playing the Panthers defense? Because obviously the Texans defense, there's less players underneath them, but they're actually guys here: Lindsey, Johnson, Arnold, Zylstra, Marshall. Some of these guys are, actually Dan Arnold is a pass catching tight end. We're not talking about guys that are going to get 5 snaps like at the bottom. Even at the bottom with Miller and Conley, like they're going to see the field. Like we're not just talking about Giovanni Ricci and those types of guys that we normally have to talk about with defenses and kickers. So do you think that maybe 17% maybe is overrun for the Panthers defense?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This defense looks good. They shut down the Saints last week. It was impressive. After what the Saints did to the Packers, just to see them. The Saints got 0 going in that game. So this was an impressive defensive unit. And now you're getting to go against a backup quarterback and 4 running backs that are, just not very good. And basically a team that's got 1 reliable wide receiver and not much else for offensive skill players. So it does probably take a defensive score for them to be worth it. And I think, especially if they get a big lead, You got a young and experienced quarterback and, just a shaky offense in general. I do think the Panthers are viable. I certainly don't think they're necessary. I mean, if you're captaining the Panthers on DraftKings, like they're $9,300. That's very expensive for a defense. So I don't think it's mandatory, but I think they're certainly in play, particularly in, Panther domination, like 5-1 type builds or something. So again, I don't mind David Johnson. I don't mind Marshall, Conley. If you're going super cheap, like I think all those guys probably project a little bit better than the Panthers defense on a point per dollar basis, but I don't mind them in the event that, I think it's possible they could get a pick six or something tonight.
How about all the cheapies underneath the Texans defense? Like now, I mean, we have Farrell Brown, Jordan Akins. They should be splitting time kind of at tight end. Ian Thomas will be on the field primarily for blocking for the Panthers. But, the Texans have to run out. I mean, they're going to run out more than Brandon Cooks out there at wide receiver. And all their wide receivers are Conley, Miller, Roberts, Chris Moore, maybe off the practice squad. I mean, it looks like down here that if I'm going to roster a cheap guy, it's most likely going to be someone from the Texans, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind taking a shot on Conley or Miller. A little bit risky, obviously, with Miller because we don't know how much he's going to play. But look, somebody's got to catch the ball for these guys, and you got guys with shorter ADOT, low, high target, high volume, but limited, yardage potential. I think are fine. So not like these guys are super ceiling guys, but you don't really need that at that salary. So. Mixing and matching Conley and Miller will probably be my way of handling it.
I just want to shout out Tommy Tremble. He did good in the preseason, apparently, and his snap count is going up. I know nothing more than that. That's it. Tommy Tremble. So if he scores a touchdown, you'll be trembling not having him. Okay. I don't think I have him in a single lineup, but I'm looking for guys that are at least going to see the field. Giovanni Ricci, we have him projected for 0.8 point. I mean, dude, he's the third running back on the Panthers. He may not see at all. He may not see anything other than special teams, right? We're dealing with some of these people. Like we actually have people that will see snaps. Is there a reason to play Alex Erickson when you could play guys that are actually going to see the field like 40 or 50 times?
No way. I had another thought there and it left me, but it'll come back.
How about FanDuel? So people still play FanDuel. I'm not a big fan of the format, but whatever. Without the multiplier,
McCaffrey's going to be 6,000% owned on FanDuel
in the MVP slot.
But
in the large field stuff, wouldn't you think that it makes it even easier not to play him in the MVP?
It really does. I mean, at least not play him in the MVP. And that at that stage, you just need somebody to outscore him. Like you can still play him in the flex, but you could just need, say, Cooks outscores him raw points and you play Cooks in the MVP, McCaffrey in the flex, then you're ahead of all those McCaffrey MVP lineups. But obviously you need somebody to outscore him.
Right, but I'm also more likely on FanDuel to just play McCaffrey in all my lineups. As far as it's hard for me to see without an injury that he's not one of the top 5 scorers on the slate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Right. That he may not be the highest one to be an MVP, which will be the mega owned because you don't have the 1.5x multiplier. But not having him in the flex, essentially you're saying that, I don't even know how that happens without an injury. How does McCaffrey not get 15? Like, what's the top 5 scorers on the slate going to be? 2 quarterbacks, 2 wide receivers, and then what? Who's going to outscore McCaffrey for the 5th spot?
2 quarterbacks and 2 Carolina receivers and 1 Houston receiver. They're all just this game's just gonna turn into an aerial. It's gonna be like, Mahomes versus Brady or something.
I guess it could happen. But I'm just saying that's the difference between DK and FanDuel is without the multiplier there makes it so much. Obviously the ownership is going to condense on the McCaffrey MVP spot.
Correct.
But with only 5 spots, you're pretty much playing who do you think the top 5 scorers on the slate are going to be combined. And the best way to get different on FanDuel is you just take someone else in the MVP spot. You could still get difference in one of the other flex spots. So playing DJ Moore in the MVP, playing McCaffrey in the captain in the flex, playing Darnold, and then playing two, guys and still leaving 2,000 on the table, like that could be doable. But I think once you plug in McCaffrey in the MVP spot, I don't. It's just like, great. You're gonna do how duplicated these lineups are going to be on FanDuel.
Yeah, there's going to be a ton of overlap there. So, I mean, if you want to be super contrarian and make a different lineup, it does have some equity to finish first alone. But I think it's going to be one of those nights on FanDuel where you see like 1,000-person tie if McCaffrey does what he is projected to do.
Okay, if you have questions, you could always post them in the YouTube chat. Give me those thummy thumbs. Like and subscribe. If you're new here, hit the notification bell to know when we go live on YouTube. Alan S. asks, is 3 Texans wide receivers too many?
I mean, no, if you think they're going to fall way behind and just chuck it. I mean, it's going to be tough for Mills to support 3 guys, but it's flimsy, but it's not stupid.
I think my lineups, I set a rule to not play more than one of the cheap Texans guys in lineups. Other than the tight ends, I don't mind the tight ends, but like between Roberts, Conley, Miller, I think that's it. Like just play one of them. I'm not gonna less likely to play 2 of them with Mills. So I think the volume just goes through Cooks no matter what. So it'll be right. Cooks plus one of those 2 guys. But you never know. You never know what's going to happen. So yes, I'm less likely to play 3 wide receivers together. Taking a look at Slate IQ. Slate IQ, Eric Beinfort puts together for us. It's done as we analyze through the results DB. We have the entire DraftKings database, historical database at our disposal. Goes through, finds the 25 closest slates to what we have, right? In game archetype, the total, the spread, the types of teams, the types of players, the salaries, everything, and then simulates based on our projected ownership and our projections, 1,000 times, 5,000 times, 10,000 times to see what the top 0.1% of lineups look like in the large field DraftKings GPP. Now, according to, this is premium, by the way. So if you sign up for RotoGrinders Premium, get $10 off your first month by clicking in the description below. You'll get this all the time. So based on our Slate IQ, the highest leverage build is 4-2 with the 4 from the winning team. Okay. So that doesn't necessarily mean it's the Panthers, right? It just means that if the Texans win, maybe it's 4-2 Texans. Every other stack construction has negative leverage. So while 3-3 does show up, 36% owned, but only wins 26% of the time, overwhelmingly, it's these 4-2 type constructions. And then if we take a look at the captain usage, we have negative leverage on the quarterbacks, about even on the running backs, running back 1. So that would be Ingram and McCaffrey. So there would be about 18% owned in the captain total and total lineups. 18% of the time they get in the top 0.1%. Quarterback, it's cut in half. Wide receiver 1, it's like double. Wide receiver 2, it's a little bit more than double. And it's a rarity. We see this in Slate IQ where DST captain is positive leverage. So if you just go by
Carolina pick 6, it's coming.
How about the Texans? It could be the Texan, right?
You never know.
You never know, right? So this is typically how I build my lineups. So like I built lineups with DJ Moore and Brandon Cooks in the captain, Conley in the captain. You just have to leave a little money on the table if you're going to do a Conley captain because you're going to get into too many dupes. But I have 1 Panthers DST captain and I have 1 Texans DST captain. Now, those are like, you throw them out and you go, I don't expect to get that money back. But if I do get it back, most likely it's going to be a lot of it. But this Slate IQ, you could pick up if you're a RotoGrinders premium member. You get all the sports if you want. All the NFL content we have. We have, so many premium shows, articles, tools, projections, smash percentages, everything that you'd ever want for NFL DFS, including the Slate IQ for Showdown. Just click the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. Let's go through the YouTube chat for some questions. Oh, Alex has most important question. How much stock are you guys putting into the Joey Sly revenge game tonight?
Yeah, kicker narratives are fun. I mean, his offense has to get him there first, right? Unless they're going to let him try some 60-yarders.
I don't think I'm playing much. I don't think I have Sly in any lineup I have. I have Gonzalez in some lineups, but not Sly. Only because obviously the Panthers are favored, so I'm more likely to have the favored kicker.
So you don't like the revenge? No,
I don't care about it. I don't like it. I don't even care.
You're no fun.
Well, I did realize that just Joey Sly was not on the Panthers when I was building my groups or whatever, right? Because I'm used to Joey Sly being on the Panthers, so that's the only thing I have to care about.
It's an honest man right there.
Right. That's it. Do I pay attention to who's on who? How could the kicker get revenge? He doesn't have anything. He has no control over anything. Like the quarterback, the running back, even some of the wide receivers. But it's not like the kicker could tell the coach. It's like, I know that we're on the opposite 40-yard line, but I want to take an 83-yard field goal for revenge. Like he doesn't have the opportunity to
give me a shot, coach.
Right. Let me go out. Let me run some routes. Another thing I like doing is going to scoresandodds.com, our sister site, to take a look at some props. Not to necessarily bet on the props, but utilize them for DFS purposes. So I'm gonna reload this here. So if we look at game details, we could go to the player props. We could see across all the books. So we see BetMGM lines right over here. So you can get receptions, touchdowns, anything. So especially like for the cheapo guys, I like looking at the touchdown props in the betting markets to see if there's, what exactly the chances are someone's going to get a touchdown, right? They're not the most efficient lines, but obviously Christian McCaffrey is what? Minus 227 on BetMGM. That's like a 70% chance at a touchdown. But you take a look here, like I'm looking through, like Terrence Marshall plus 280, Akins plus 550. Right, Chris Conley plus 280. So I'm looking for like the cheaper guys, like Ian Thomas plus 700, which is still a long shot, but it's not as long shot. Tommy Tremble plus 2,000, like that's a long shot. But the fact that he's even listed shows that maybe it's better than if they're not listed. That's typically a bad sign. Typically, you probably shouldn't have them in your showdown lineups if they don't even have a touchdown prop.
What's Robbie Anderson?
Robbie Anderson is plus 165.
Free one for the crowd tonight. I like the Robbie Anderson props. If you're not comfortable with the touchdown over the receiving yards, whatever it is, I like Robbie Anderson tonight. I know he hasn't done as much first couple games, but I think eventually he'll get some long ones. I mean, his average depth of target's like 22 yards. I think Anderson breaks one tonight. So Anderson is my favorite. If you're actually into betting those props, I like him tonight. And stands to reason I like him in DFS too. But those are good things to look at. Yeah, you mentioned it from the DFS building angle too. See what these books are got sharp people behind the scenes grinding these numbers. So it's good stuff.
Right. We can see on the receiving yards for Moore versus Anderson. Last year they were much closer. Now we have Moore at MGM is 69.5, but Robbie Anderson is 45.5. And unless you take the past two games as like that's gospel, it's always going to be that way. I mean, we saw last year that DJ Moore would have big games and Anderson wouldn't, and then Anderson would have big games and Moore wouldn't. So I think I'm on your side that a 45-yard prop to have a 25-yard difference between the two players, maybe a little too wide.
Yeah, I think Anderson's numbers are way too low tonight, so I'll put my thumbs up on Anderson to go over his yards and score a touchdown tonight. If that happens, it'd be a good night for me.
Right, because if we look at some of these cheaper receivers, receiving yards for Conley, MGM has it 27.5, Miller 23.5. So we take a look at like Farrell Brown 18.5, Akins 17.5, Ian Thomas 7.5. Right. So you could just look through some of the props just across the board. And just obviously we have projections that, all of that is taken into account already. But I mean, the range of outcomes in one single game could be so wide. So like, I like looking at scoresandodds.com and seeing what props there are, touchdowns or passing yards, rushing yards. Because while everyone may think like, oh, this is going to be a shootout, and then you see like Davis Mills, 210, 210.5. Is he that bad? That his prop should be 210.5?
He stinks. And then, you know what? Since we were talking about it, I'm going to do this right now. We'll do it live. I am going to do a little same game parlay here, and we're going to take these Robbie Anderson numbers and maybe ship a little bit tonight. So we'll see if it.
So what's your are you doing receptions and yardage together?
Let's see if I can. It's always a little bit iffy on what it lets you combine. So if I do Robbie Anderson to score, Robbie Anderson receiving yards. Let's see, there it is. We'll do over in these same game parlays. You can just kind of pick a number. So I'll do over 54.5. That in and of itself, Robbie Anderson over 54.5 yards and to score is plus 350, just by itself, which I think is very reasonable.
And then you could put the money line for the Panthers in that also.
Yeah, that gets you plus 425. That's good for now. I don't want to take up too much time on the show, but yeah, if I do that, plus 425, put some money on that.
And what I would always suggest to people doing same game parlays is to use an odds calculator to get the best odds for it. So like by combining the two, typically same game parlays, they already add in the behind the scenes, the correlation coefficient to it, because obviously there are things that there's a reason why books in the past have not, that they're called same game parlays for a reason, because they wouldn't let you build correlated parlays, because just like in DFS, it's dissimilar to DFS, right? The reason why we correlate in NFL DFS is because, well, when Patrick Mahomes has a good game, the Chiefs receivers have good games. So it's more likely that when one thing happens, another thing happens. So you're not going to get, if something's plus 100 correlated with something else that's plus 100, you're not going to get, plus 200 on that. You're going to get plus 175 total on it. It's going to take whatever that correlation is worth out of it. So my suggestion is, if you use an odds converter or a calculator of some type, and take the odds individually and find out what that implied probability is, and then compare it to the same game parlay. And you could find different books like you said, Justin, like you could pick like that receiving yard, like that you're allowed to do so much in a same game parlay that maybe one way you do it, it's, you get, plus 177, but another way you do it that's very similar, you're getting plus 189. It's like, oh, well, if they're pretty much the same thing, I'd rather do it this way versus that way. And so that's
yeah,
and a little advanced tips on how
it's
to
great.
do same game parlays.
Yeah, it's great advice. Which of course I didn't use for that one I just did there, because I did it in about 90 seconds, and I placed it on DraftKings, and then I went over to FanDuel, and it's a little bit better odds over there, but that's okay. Did that one quick on the show, and I'm not sure. We don't have BetMGM in Illinois yet, but most of the books are getting on board with those same game parlays, and I'm not sure if BetMGM offers those yet or not. But it's really cool on these showdown single game slates to do that. I mean, Cal works with us at RotoGrinders, has kind of referred to it as it's a kind of build your own DFS GPP thing, which I think he did. He hit one in that Ravens game the first week for some pretty good cash. So it's a really interesting thing to do on these. I mean, it's Texans and the Panthers. So giving yourself more ways to sweat it out is certainly interesting.
Or you hedge, or what I would do for this peace of mind is that if I'm playing no McCaffrey captain lineups, well, give me some same game parlays on McCaffrey over receiving, over rushing,
over everything,
over 2 touchdowns, right? At least give me that. Give me put down $20 on that. So like, oh, well, if McCaffrey puts up 50 fantasy points, it's like, yes, I will not cash any of my GPP lineups, but maybe I'll make a couple $100 on the other side on some long, 100 yards rushing, 100 yards receiving type of thing. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could do that in MMA. Like, a lot of people don't realize that because of the linear nature of MMA, where one fight, the next fight, the next fight, if you're close, like when I won $116,000 in MMA, I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready to hedge for that amount, but like I could have put down, like, it basically came down to, if neither of the I had neither of the last fight, and if one of those guys won like decisively in the first round, like then that's like kind of the only way that I could lose. So like the better thing to do would be like to put, a round one prop on both fighters for like 10 grand. Because I think the line was still like plus 375, plus 550 or something. Is like, so the worst case scenario is I either lose $25,000 in that, but I win the 116,000. So I still make, 90 grand, or I don't come in first place, but then I win one of those bets and I still make like 60 grand or something. There's obviously you could calculate kind of where that middle is, but I think if you're playing DFS, you can use betting as a way to kind of edge out some of your line.
I had this happen in golf about a month ago, to where and the golf tournament went into a playoff. So there were only 2 golfers left. And I knew if this guy won, I was going to get like 4th place in a GPP. If he didn't win, I was going to fall like outside the top 15. And so I calculated exactly what the difference was going to be if the golfer that I had won versus the golfer that I didn't have. And it was like a $15,000 difference. And it's like, I don't want a $15,000 GPP swing happening on just who wins this playoff. And so I was like, well, I'll still, take a little bit more if my guy wins. So I went over, I bet 5,000 on the other guy. And so that way, if my guy wins, I still get 10 grand extra. And if he doesn't, at least I got the 5K bet over here. My guy ended up winning. So, I threw away the 5K hedge, but with that kind of money on the line, like if you're in a serious position in a GPP, obviously it's harder to do in football with, games and these single game slates happening so often, but there's just opportunities where you can use that, and you just got to stay on top of it. And that was the one time, it's probably the first time that I've been able to at least take advantage of it for a live hedge type of deal.
Right. I wasn't prepared for that amount.
Like yeah, no, I wouldn't have been either. I was prepared. I wasn't really prepared for the 5K either, but I made it happen. So
right. I wasn't prepared for a 40K, 50K head. I wouldn't have been able to get the money in. So like that sometimes there's a limit to that. Like in the normal MMA stuff, sometimes it's like 50K to first, and like, yeah, okay, I could hedge out for that, but not for 150,000 or whatever. Okay, so the little tips you get here. We got 10 minutes left before kickoff. Feel free to post your questions in the YouTube chat. Give me those thumbs while you're here. Yes, and the website we're looking at is scoresandodds.com. You could go there and you can compare lines, look at props, look at line movements, anything you want. It's helpful for DFS also, even if you're not betting. But let's see. Let's go through Cody Perkins, Cook's viable captain. Yep. That Dan Janning, what do you think of an Anthony Miller captain? The only thing that I will say about the cheap captains is that they're not as unique as you think they are, because if you're going to spend all of your salary. So for instance, let's do this as an example. Of course, I still got groups in here, so it may not be exact, but Anthony Miller is projected to be 0.5% owned in the captain spot, which sounds like, oh, no one. Yeah, but the contest we're playing is like, let me take a look. How many lineups do we have in the large field contest? 100,000 something? Something like that. What is it? 197,000. 200,000. 200,000 in there. What's 0.5% of 200,000?
So that's 0.005 times 200,000, 1,000 lineups.
Okay, so 1,000 lineups. You think no one has Anthony Miller in the captain? So now we can
1,000 of you crazy folks do.
Right, 1,000 do, and then if you spend all your money and optimize or something, like if you have Miller, Conley, Cooks, Moore, Darnold, McCaffrey, like, well, there's still gonna be 500 of those. I mean, there's still gonna be 100 of those lines. I mean, like, only because people are gonna jam in as much as they can, right? You could play McCaffrey, Darnold, Moore, and Cooks in that lineup.
You know how you differentiate that lineup? With some Joey Sly revenge. That's how
instead of McCaffrey. Instead of McCaffrey.
That's right. And you leave $9 grand on the table because Joey Sly is going to go out there and outscore C-Mac.
Right. But that's the only issue. I do have one line. I have 2 Conley captain lineups, but I've not spent the cap because it's easy to just jam. I mean, who else are you going to be playing? You're going to be jamming in all the highest projected plays, but other people are going to do that too, even with a 0.5% owned captain. Okay, so just understand that. So it's okay to play the cheap captains. They still need to put up a good amount of points. A lot of times they don't. But if you do, for duplication purposes in the large field, it's not as unique as you think it is. Download the CSV and play those lineups and then download the CSV and you'll see, oh my God, my lineup's been duplicated 83 times, even with a 0.5% on captain. And because there's so few combinations of players for the rest of the flex positions that spend like more than 48,000 in salary. So everyone just does that. Out of those 500, crazy people that are building those types of lineups. Let's see, going through the YouTube chat. Yeah, Eric Johnson, Driscoll captain. Is Davis Mills going to get benched? Do we play the is this Siege? Is Siege in the chat?
Well, that's the lineups you got. Those are the ones where you're just hoping, McCaffrey goes down or something. That's where the leverage is tonight with the Chuba Hubbard lineups.
But would you play? How about Chuba Hubbard?
I think he's viable for sure. I mean, you're banking on McCaffrey. Like in a lineup where you don't have McCaffrey, it's not crazy. There's no point in doing it in a McCaffrey lineup. But
they get up to so much of a lead that Hubbard comes in for the entire fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, that's
McCaffrey has 250 scrimmage yards, and we don't need him any. We're up to 4 touchdowns, and Chuba Hubbard is in.
I mean, it's possible. That's why we've got him at like 20% ownership at like 2 projected points.
What? Really? Are you serious? We have him at 20%?
18.7 is what I see, but I haven't refreshed it. Let me do that now.
Okay. Yeah. I don't have any Chuba Hubbard. Yeah, I didn't think 18. Wow, 18.7.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a little hot. I don't think you'll be that high, but
we even projected for 1.39 median points. Why would he be 18%?
Yeah, that one strikes me a little bit. I hadn't really looked at that number before just now, but people playing that. I mean, he's cheap. Well, he's cheapish. No, that number's thrown me for a loop.
Right, especially when there's cheaper play. Like you're telling me Hubbard's going to be more owned than Pharaoh Brown or the Texans defense, or Anthony Miller is 14.6% owned. Chuba Hubbard's 18%.
Yeah, but Anthony Miller hasn't seen the field. I mean, he's only projected for about 4 points too. So it's just.
Well, that's 3 more times. That's 3 times more than Hubbard.
Yeah, but three times from 1.5 to 4 is just less exciting. Look, if you want to play the Panther onslaught narrative, I suppose. The easiest way for Hubbard to get there is for McCaffrey to get hurt. We don't really want to root for that to happen. But I think he makes the most sense in lineups where you don't have McCaffrey.
Bill Thomas says, how about a Joey Sly fake field goal touchdown pass to Miller?
It's weird things like that, man, that often win these slates. So
doesn't he have it? Didn't that happen when he was on the Panthers? Didn't he have a passing touchdown last year or something? It wasn't a showdown slate, because if that was a showdown slate and the kicker has a passing touchdown, Twitter would have just melted, right? I mean, because that Mariota captain night was like meltdown city of like, oh my God, and someone has a captain of them.
I don't think it. I googled Joey Sly touchdown pass. The first result I got was about him missing a 54-yard field goal. The second one was about him missing a 65-yard game-winning field goal. And the third one was about him setting the Virginia Tech all-time scoring record. So I don't think he has a touchdown pass, but
how about a touchdown catch?
That could be. Could happen.
Could happen. Right? Joey Sly's the one with 2 touchdowns, right? No field goals. Christian McCaffrey kicks the extra points.
So it's officially gone off the reservation. That's the nature of this game tonight. It's the Texans just aren't super exciting to talk about. So we've spent far too much time on Joey Sly, but that's okay. It's fun.
Okay. So we got 3 minutes left. We got the chat up in the YouTube chat. Feel free to post your last minute questions. Feel free to give it the thumbs ups, the thummy thumbs. It always helps us out. Subscribe to the RotoGrinders Fantasy Football podcast feed. We have all the shows over there. I know the Advanced Sports Analytics show that I did today just came out there. So rate and review that on iTunes. And as always, all the tools that you see on the screen and all the projections and everything that we're using, you get as part of a RotoGrinders premium membership. It's pretty cheap. You can get a combo one. You get everything. You get MMA. You get NBA's coming back, MLB. I mean, just like it's all you can eat all the time, and the premium Discord, which I'm in all the time answering questions. So sign up for RotoGrinders Premium. Click on the link in the description. You get $10 off your first month. Jermaine Dorsey says, "What's up, guys? Brown or Conley on DK?"
I think I go Conley. I like Conley and Miller as kind of my cheaper plays.
I mean, they're gonna. I mean, you have to assume the Texans aren't just going to run one wide receiver. There's going to be a second wide receiver on most of their plays. So it may not be Conley on all of them, but I mean,
yeah,
I think one of these secondary wide receivers has to kind of get there. Not necessarily like in the winning lineup, but at least score points, right?
Okay, gotta do something.
All right, gotta do something. But Conley, I think that the issue is Conley or Miller. Here's my opinion. You may have the opposite take. So I think people may be scared of Miller because he's been inactive, healthy inactive for 2 games. But I think it could be because Amendola was in as a slot. Like, why do they need Miller? They typically run 2 wide receiver sets. Amendola is a slot receiver. So when they need a slot receiver, they use Amendola. What's the purpose of having Miller active? So I think maybe it's the case that Miller could actually walk into a much bigger role. I think he has more upside to walk into a bigger role than Conley, because Conley was playing as the second wide receiver as it was.
Right. Yeah, no, there's no doubt Miller has probably more of a ceiling. Just a matter of what the snaps are going to be like. And I mean, we've seen him be productive before. So yeah, I don't mind him.
Okay, we are at lock. And I got my non-Christian McCaffrey captain lineups in, and we'll see how it goes. It's either going to be really bad or possibly just okay. I mean, like it's one of those things where like I'm rooting for McCaffrey because he's in 12 or 15 on my lineups, but I'm not rooting that much. Like I want him to like, okay, catch the ball, run 40 yards, and then go down, and then let someone else get the touchdown.
That's right.
Okay. Any final words before we get out of here?
Oh man, we got the Jags next week, so it'll be just as fun. What did we do for this? What do we do to draw this straw? We got the Jags next week, but Rams Seahawks in week 5, so we can look forward to that one. But no, it's fun. This was a fun one tonight.
Okay, so let's see what crappers scored today, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'm always on in the morning, Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern for the DFS pregame show. So feel free to tune into that. As usual, go to BetMGM. If you want $200 instantly, you bet $10. And if your team scores a touchdown, boom, $200. So go to BetMGM. Use the promo code GRINDERSBET to do that. And then until next Thursday, for Justin Van Zuden, STL Cards, I'm Jordan Cooper, Blender HD, and that has been the Pre-Lock Show on RotoGrinders.com.